Hey guys, what's up? It is week 364. I'm looking mighty gray today, I must say. But yeah, let's just jump right into the reviews. The first one up is from Deaf Crocodile, and then this is Dead Mountaineer's Hotel. This is a 4K. Deaf Crocodile usually dabbles in animation and a lot of Soviet kind of films, Russian films, Eastern European films. This is one of those. But they do dabble a little bit in the horror and sci-fi kind of subgenres, which is one of my all-time favorites. And this is a movie that has been on my radar for many years. I'd heard about it just kind of in passing. I heard that it's a very bizarre kind of film. And it's perfect for the 4K format. So I popped this in, and this thing looks spectacular. The colors were very vibrant, but it was also a movie that was incredibly dark and used its lighting and that kind of techniques very well. So in 4K, it used a lot of its lighting and composition and stuff really well. So the plot is a bizarre one. So a detective is called to this isolated, Dead Mountaineer's Hotel, where he's supposed to kind of investigate criminal activity and not necessarily even 100% sure what he was going there for, but right when he gets there, he realizes something's completely off. He starts to suspect that one of these guys is a mobster. There's kind of these weird, eccentric variety of characters that don't really mesh. A kind of a couple that seems really kind of like vibrant and young and dancing and just kind of bizarre. We have another couple that's like the age difference is enormous, and he kind of shows a little bit of kinship in the guy who runs the place. But pretty quick, we learn that something suspicious is happening and somebody is murdered. They end up dead, and he starts to investigate, but not is all as it seems. And as it goes on, meeting the characters, it feels kind of like a suspense kind of style film, maybe a crime film, but characters bring up strange things in the dialogue, like, possible aliens, and before long, we are definitely into a murder, mystery, science fiction, alien invasion, bizarre film here. And I think the lead performance is really strong. I think that he is a very interesting character, and the way they portrayed the character, and he's actually probably the character with the most kind of warts and all on him as the film unfolds and we learn more about all the characters. But the one thing that took me back is it's in a great location, right? And it's 4:3. It's a 4:3 movie. So even though, a lot of times, every time people bring up, it looks excellent, it's such well shot, you always think that it is generally in a scope or widescreen or some sort of format that's not the 4:3. But it doesn't really hold this one back. I could have, it just registered in my head, it's got to be 4:3. Like, sometimes you make a mistake, but I'm thinking, and it's like, it is 4:3, right? But the isolation fits well with that format of, hopefully, I feel like now I'm saying all this about 4:3 and I'm wrong, but I just like as memory. I didn't write it down, but this is mostly memory show. But yeah, so I'm saying like it's shot incredibly well. And so within the hotel, right, they lose power because, the elements and things of that nature. And many times films, they'll do a lot of day for nights and things of that nature. But I feel like these are night for nights, or some of the best day for nights I've seen filmed. But within the hotel, we have a lot of lights that kind of flicker throughout, or signs or stuff. And the way they film it is visually amazing because you can actually see everything that's going on, yet it's dark, which is a rarity, especially, a movie from 1979. This is an odd one too, because making it under kind of like the Iron Curtain, there's definitely some weird kind of things going on in the story and of that nature. And the ending is definitely one of the most interesting ideas, right? It almost turns into like a diary style confession of our lead character, kind of justifying his actions and understanding and things of that nature. And the commentary kind of brings up the idea that this character probably is hated in the Estonian crowd, but anyone else watching it probably would have justified his actions. But it's not an incredibly violent film. It's not an incredibly gory or heavily sexual film. But it does have these weird kind of mystery and murder suspense elements. But it kind of turns it all on its head. The characters are intriguing. The doppelganger idea is great, and there's amazing visuals. And that's kind of like what this film is. Kind of one of the strong points is I keep saying the visuals. And it really is the visuals, but it also has a fantastic score, which in the commentary I learned that is actually gibberish. Like they did, like, because the composer said, or the director in the commentary, they're like, well, if we actually had it in a language, somebody else would pick up the movie and translate it poorly and make their own song with the background music, and it would just be terrible. So they spoke gibberish, so there's no real way to translate, and it's fantastic. The music is really great prog rock style stuff. As far as the special features, this is a new 4K restoration, first ever worldwide 4K Blu-ray release, new commentary by film historian Michael Brook. Good commentary. Snow Job, a routine investigation in Dead Mountaineers Hotel. New visual essay by Ryan Verrill and Dr. Will Dotson of Someone's Favorite Pod. Excerpt from the documentary bonus track on composer Steve Grunberg and his score for the film, 13 minutes. Original new trailers for the film's vintage making of. Dead Mountaineers Hotel featurette created by Estonian Public, 20 minutes. Vintage Soviet Estonian newsreel footage of the making of the film. New art by Beth Morris. If you guys have heard of this film and you haven't had a chance to check it out, I would highly recommend this one. It's very good stuff here. It is 1371. My bad. I don't know why I had that full kind of screen kind of deal in there, but yeah, excellent movie, fantastic movie, great performances. It's the problem is the more I say about it, the more I spoil about it. Except it's a deeply intriguing murder mystery that turns into a science fiction kind of wild, weird one, and I would recommend this one. Check it out. We have another 4K here, and this is an upgrade from Arrow Video, and this is Paul W. Anderson's Soldier from 1998. This is the fourth film by Paul W. Anderson. Paul W. Anderson started with Shopping, which is more of like a kind of, I guess, indie film, and he would work on Mortal Kombat, of course, and Event Horizon, which those two movies I think have a cult following. And Soldier was one that was a pretty big film, $60-70 million budget, and it really didn't perform the way it was supposed to perform. People, I guess, at Warner Bros. They had more expectations for it, and it really kind of was a flop in a weird way. And I'm not saying that just because it's a flop, it's actually genuinely a bad movie. I've always found that's pretty weird. It just kind of just really didn't get the recognition or the the love when it came out that it did. It has an excellent cast. Kurt Russell stars in this one, legendary actor. Started off at a young age, of course, Tombstone, The Thing, Escape from New York. It's fucking Kurt Russell, one of the greatest of all times. Also has Gary Busey in here. I completely forgot Busey was in this movie. A wild man, kind of toned down, but still a good performance. Jason Isaacs, who at this time was up and coming, underrated actor. I've always felt that he was a very good kind of villain role, and he fits that very well here. We also have Connie Nielsen, Michael Chiklis. There's other people. I can't think of the other character who's also in Event Horizon and Dog Soldiers. Very good actor. He has a good role in here as well. And an actor that I want to put a special spotlight on. We also have the guy from The Jungle Book and the Bruce Lee Dragon Story is kind of a like super soldier as well. But the one actor I do want to kind of point out here is James Black, and he plays Riley, one of the other kind of characters in line with Kurt Russell. And James Black was an Ohio actor who got to start in Ohio on Tempe Films, super low-budget movies from Akron, Ohio, stuff like Zombie Cop and Chick Boxer, Galaxy of Dinosaurs, but he would move into some of the bigger Tempe movies like Ozone. And eventually he found success in the Hollywood kind of system, making movies like Soldier and other films of that nature. So it's really cool to see kind of a small local actor that I used to watch, not local to me, but local Ohio actor that I used to watch at a young age, kind of be in a bigger film like this. But so the plot is in the future, but it's past. It starts off in the past. You know what I'm saying? But that kind of idea, right? Where it's like it takes place in like 2038 or something along that line, somewhere around that time. So the near future, and God, we're nowhere near this far advanced in the science fiction technology world. And some sources say, this was partially a side sequel to Blade Runner, kind of in the same universe. And Kurt, in the future, they basically go and they take orphans or babies that are born that are aggressive, and they turn them into super soldiers, right? And immediately they kind of send them off to war and train them from a young age. If they're not any good, boom, they take them out. Gary Busey is the kind of commander of this force. Kurt Russell is Todd, the best soldier of the bunch. He doesn't really talk very much, but in the very beginning we see that he's battle-worn, battle-torn, and him and his men have been through a bunch of military exercises and fights and wars and of that nature, and they're tough and they're clever. Jason Isaac enters and he says, "Hey, I got the new guys here. They're better. They're bred better. We kind of genetically modified them. They should mop the floor with your guys." They do some tests, and Kurt Russell gets his ass whooped, and they kind of figure these guys are obsolete. They send him to a junk planet thinking he's dead, but there's people there that are hiding that have accidentally been dropped off there, a whole civilization. And Kurt Russell, this violent man, this man who knows nothing about feelings or any of that kind of thing, has kind of a redemption arc with them. He moves in and he realizes he's obsolete, but he is good at one thing, and they're going to need his services eventually when when the super soldiers end up kind of looking through this place to destroy everything because it's supposed to be kind of a planet with nothing on it. So that's pretty much what we come down to, right? Kurt Russell has to face against the super new soldiers, an old dog. He has his tricks and what of that nature. So The Soldier is a movie that it's a tropey action sci-fi movie. It falls into all those categories, right? Of that character that's misunderstood, but he's got to find his humanity. He's got to have a redemption arc. He's a super soldier kind of deal. We'd see it stuff like Universal Soldier in a certain aspect, right? Or the turning in a man into a super kind of machine or whatnot. In RoboCop, tons of things, tons of movies, or that kind of like Rambo or something. Anything of that nature. So it's full of these kind of trope kind of deals. But the thing is, Kurt Russell's character doesn't talk all that much, and I'm glad they went with Kurt Russell. There was talk about other action stars, but Kurt Russell has very expressive eyes. If you see in Tombstone, his eye, and he uses them to his full fucking advantage here. He doesn't have much dialogue, so his face is pretty expressive, but he has to keep it mostly in his eyes because he's a soldier. So Kurt Russell's obviously a professional actor, does a fantastic job. Is in amazing shape, took this role completely 100% serious here, and he does a fantastic job for what they ask of him. Now, the action is pretty solid. There's always something going on. The CGI mixed with practical. There's CGI in here, and it's pretty solid, for the time especially, although some new CGI is crummy, worse than this and everything of that nature. But, the actual, practical stuff, the guns, the machines and stuff, the tanks and the weapons they built look fucking good. That's the kind of mixture in this, like, late 90s, early 2000s. They were still using practical with the CGI, and I think a lot of these movies have worked really well, and I think Soldier's one of them. So in 1997 or 8, when this movie came out, I remember my family watched it, and we said that's a pretty average, mediocre movie for the time. And then probably, 2010 or something, I rewatched this movie, and I was like, oh, that was pretty good, man. That was pretty good stuff. And me and my friends would talk about, Soldier's kind of a decent, solid movie, and I always kind of liked Paul W. Anderson's early stuff. Like, I had a soft spot for Mortal Kombat, but Event Horizon's also pretty solid, and this one as well. So, and then we're sitting there, and then this comes out on 4K, and I'm like, wow. So, I'm going to check this fucking thing out. And I watch it, and I'm like, this still holds up. So I've seen this movie in 3 different, times in my life. When it came out, it was kind of average in comparison to the other movies that came out. It was nothing too special, but looking back on it now, I'm like, this movie was a little bit better than people gave it credit for. I think that the sets are great. I think that the story is simple, but it's sincere, and everybody involved with it does a good job. And I mean, I like the cast a lot. I think everybody in here is good. The action is good. The special effects are solid. There's no real complaints about this. And the score is good, too. The score has a little bit of tinges to me of like the James Horner score from Aliens. I think Horner did Aliens. I'm just probably making all these mistakes off the top of my head. But but I think the score is very reminiscent of Aliens. You'll hear like kind of the stingers in the background, and they just like nice little kind of shout outs to Kurt Russell's previous roles and everything of that nature. And there's tons and tons and tons of features on here. So here we go. We have a commentary by director Paul Anderson, co-producer Jeremy Bolton, actor Jason Isaacs. This is archival, of course. Reporting for duty, a brand new interview with actor James Black. Fire in the Hole, which is great because J.R. Bookwalter does a lot of the special features on here, makes them, and he has a direct connection with James Black because he directed a lot of those Tempe movies, so that's fun. Fire in the Hole, brand new interview and with assistant director Dennis McGuire. On the Front Lines, a brand new interview with associate producer Fred Fontana. Designing of the Future, for the Future, a brand new interview with production designer David L. Snyder. VFX, before and after, behind the scenes look at how the film's special effects were created in visuals with visual effects supervisor Craig Barron. Weapons of Mass Creation, interviews and video effects supervisor Craig Barron and Van Ling, and miniature supervisor Michael Joyce. Soldier's Journey, a brand new interview with Danny Stewart, author of Soldier from Script to Screen. We Don't Need Another Hero, brand new retrospective on the film with film historian Heath Holland from Serial at Midnight. So then we have archival electronical press kit and on-set interviews with cast and crew. These are archival stuff, relatively short, pretty brief. But yeah, the special features open up your eyes a lot, how much this was worked on, how they basically got the production designer who worked on tons of great movies. All the people that were involved with this were very professional and did their best they could. And Heath Holland kind of breaks it down, mentions a lot of action movies, tropes, and defends this movie, rightfully so. And I think that Soldier is a much better movie than it ever got credit for. It's nice to see it get another life, and I think that people, from watching a lot of the crappy action movies that they've seen in the last 10 years, could really show some appreciation towards Soldier. It's not Kurt Russell's best movie, but it's a damn good one, and I always liked it, and I still like it. Paul W. Anderson is also not like one of my guys. I don't really watch I saw the first couple Resident Evils, and I'm not a huge fan of them, but I did like Event Horizon, and I did like Soldier. So it's more so the not his direction or anything. It's just the subject matter of the way those movies are. I'm not too big of a fan of them, but I do really like Soldier and Event Horizon. I'll have to check out Shopping. But yeah, Soldier, check it out. Okay, we're starting a box set here from Arrow Videos, and this is the Samurai Revolution trilogy, and we're starting off with a big one here, and this is the original 13 Assassins from 1963, if I'm not mistaken. This is a Toei movie, and from the commentary by Tom Mez, I learned quite a bit, and got some background on this movie that actually helped me kind of understand where Toei was at this time. I love Toei films, I love Toho films, I love Nikatsu, I love Dai, I love the Japanese kind of, the big kind of companies that were producing movies in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and some of them till now. But Toei at this time was doing something a little bit different, and stuff like Seven Samurai came out, Kurosawa films, and they started kind of shifting a little bit. This director here did Yokohama BJ Blues, which is a great movie that Radiance Films put out, which is I think it's a 70s film that kind of focuses on that geographical locations, kind of like a crime film. Excellent movie. So this one here is an excellently directed film, and I guess this director really wasn't touching these kind of movies before this one. So 13 Assassins was remade in 2010, 2013 by Takashi Miike, which is an excellent movie too. The remake is good. It is different. It is much more violent, and I would say there's more bloodshed within the movie. But this one is really good as well. And this is a relatively long movie, 2 hours and 10 minutes, but it takes place at a time when Japan was in peace. For a period of times in Japan, they have been in peace, and a lot of times they have samurai still. Samurai's job is to kind of defend and fight, and who they kind of are who's in charge of them. But a lot of times they hit this point, right, where they're providing for their master providing for these samurai that are never fighting because it's a time of peace. So the samurai feel lost. They don't have this they can't feel their destiny or be do what they're supposed to do or feel the need to do. So during this time of peace, there is somebody who is put in a position of power that is absolutely awful. They're a horrible person, and this intelligent guy realizes that this guy has to be taken out after. There's a real nasty tragedy in the beginning where a woman is raped and somebody is murdered, and then she commits suicide. This leaves a lot of disdain in this man's soul, and he's very upset with it, and he thinks for the betterment of Japan, this man must be taken out, although he is the shogun's brother. So he still has to take him out, and his only shot is while he's traveling, and it's kind of the idea, right? We got to get as many samurai, the people that can help us do this, and all they obviously get is 13 assassins. And this thing is elaborately planned out. You see maps and places of that nature. There's a lot of run-ins and times where they kind of are ready to go, but they have like a back where they can't make it. And at the same time, we have this core group of samurai, these 13 assassins. Some of them from different walks of life, some of them different characters where we pick them up, and a lot of them completely different. But what we do have is also the guy who's basically sold, himself to the opposing force. And this guy is a samurai who lives with honor, but has given his word, and he's here to protect this man. As bad as he is, as horrible as he must do his duty and diligently. And that's the samurai code between these two guys, between these two forces, and they know each other, they're aware of each other, and they've known each other as well, and they have a great exchange. And this character is an interesting character, right? It reminds me a bit of the Wild Bunch. It has some of my favorite dialogue of all time in the Wild Bunch, or the meaningful, I probably won't get it verbatim, but paraphrasing, there's that great line, right, where Pike Bishop says he gave him his word, talking about Robert Ryan's character, and Ernest Borgnine snaps back, it's not that you give your word, it's who you give it to, right? But this idea, he has that honor where the samurai must carry it out. But there's a lot of planning, and of course there's the big kind of intelligent attack where they must go up against 4 times their force, and many of the characters die. It's not an incredibly violent film. It's not in that aspect, right, where there's bloodshed and the crazy classic spray, it doesn't go into slow motion like a Kurosawa film. It's got its own style, but it's definitely in the vein of that kind of storyline. I love the lead guy. He's in a couple movies that I've seen. He's a fantastic actor, and he has some of the best dialogue within the movie. He's trying to convince his nephew, who doesn't really want to do this. He says, listen, I'll play music, I'll help you through that way. And they have this big exchange where they're talking about cats and dogs, and he's basically with this woman that he stays with, geisha or something of that nature. I'm probably mispronouncing what she is, but it's maybe like I don't want to say prostitute, but in that kind of vein a little bit, but not necessarily. But he lives with her, and he's kind of happy and content, and they have a cat, and they bring up this cat, and he says, I'd like to live and the guy says, well, you'd rather live as a cat to this woman who nobody really owes. You coexist with a cat. You don't own a cat, then be a samurai's dog, right? Because if he pledges himself, then it's basically a suicide mission. So that's the kind of idea. But they have this big exchange where they're back and forth about him. He's like, I used to want to play music, and then I realized it was easier to die as a samurai. And it's just like the whole thing, and I was just like, oh, that's so nuanced and touching and great and just well acted and just something that really connected with me, the whole speech and everything of that nature. And just to convince him over, it was like, that's so great. Great stuff, great filmmaking, great dialogue. This is also, I believe, isn't this one based on somewhat of a historical event, but I don't know how true it actually is. I know in the books at the end of the film they said that this character that they were searching for actually died on the way, but it was a illness. So I don't know how much is taken liberties. But yeah, the end fight scene's great. And if you watch samurai films, it's not your typical charge forth, cut through, like a sword fight in the medieval times or something of that nature. It's about positioning, right? And sometimes the samurai have to retreat to get a better position and then come back with the one strike, because one strike with this sword, the sharp, it's very, you're done, it's over. But excellent film. I would recommend this one. And there's faces of characters you don't expect. Like one of the characters, he's like a bad tough guy and he does great in the fight, but at one point he doesn't have his sword. He's like running from another guy frantically, and it's just like unnerving, to be honest. But excellent film. As far as the features, we have brand new commentary by film critic and Japanese expert Tom Mez. The Samurai Variations, a brand new video essay by music supervisor and Japanese cinema expert James Balmont on legendary composer Akira Ukafubi's score for the film. This guy who did the score did the scores for all the Handro movies like Godzilla and all those kind of movies, and did hundreds of scores, and he was one of the most prolific and well-respected composers of all time in Japan. And then we also have Samurai Guerrilla Part 1, an archival interview with Eiichi Kudō's former assistant director Mizu Araki and filmmaker Dirty Kudō, discuss Kudō and Toei's role in the Japanese film landscape of the 60s. So yeah, excellent start to this box set. And if anybody's not seen this one, they've seen the Takashi Miike, I would recommend checking out the original 13 Assassins. I think you will enjoy it. Just remember, different time, so different approach, but still the basic kind of same story. And I love the kind of man on a mission movies, even the American counterparts that were made later, like the Dirty Dozen and Kelly's Heroes or something, especially when they're suicide missions. I love that kind of stuff. Big into those kind of films, whether it's a samurai, a war, a western, any of that kind of stuff. Good stuff. Okay, the next one here is from Cult Epics, and this is a 4K of Tinto Brass film from 1983, The Key. So Tinto Brass, I know him from, of course, his bigger films for the horror fans, like Caligula and whatnot, but I've seen a couple other ones like Snack Bar Budapest, Snack Bar Budapest, which I really like, cool crime film, and then I've seen some of his more like sexually oriented films like Cheeky and All Ladies Do It. All Ladies Do It was 92, Cheeky's like 2000. This one's early for 83, so I meant for this kind of style film for him. He's always had like sexual kind of things in his films, but I guess, listen to the commentary with Ercolani, and I can't think of the other guy's name. I'll read it when I go through the thing. They basically talk about this as a different movie for Tinto Brass at the time, and after this, it kind of changed everything. So Tinto Brass, his films, his earlier films, always looked excellent, right? He shot them perfectly well, and great set designs, and he had a lot of good actors, and but a lot of times as he went on in his career, they got more pornographic, they got more sexualized, and they kind of pushed these boundaries, and they became almost like kind of shocking in certain ways, although prosthetic penis, not real penises of that nature, but they never went full pornographic. They were more softcore in nature. But The Key is the backdrop of 1940 fascist Italy, so a lot of the characters, they attend the fascist kind of place, there's parties and of that nature, so they have to hold up this kind of certain kind of aspect of themselves and characters and whatnot. But through the backdrop, there's all these perversions and things of nature and whatnot. Frank Finley is kind of one of the stars of this movie. I know him from his horror films like Life Force, where he has a great role in that one. Barbara Caprizzi is in this one as well, from like Opera and Cemetery Man. You'll recognize her right away. She's not a big role in Cemetery Man, but it's always very memorable to me. You Can Pay Me as well. And the lead actress in this movie was a pretty big actress, Stephanie Sandarelli. And I've seen her, I think in other films, but she didn't really stand out to me. But she's great in this one. Gorgeous woman. Tinto Brass always makes sure he puts a lot of very attractive, females in his film because there's plenty of nudity. But this is kind of just the perversions of Frank Finley and his wife, and he becomes kind of obsessed with the idea that his son-in-law his daughter's husband is having an affair with his wife, and his wife is madly in love with him. And through their diaries, they start to kind of learn about each other and read through each other's things. And he gets more and more jealous, but it also turns him on in a weird way. But he has ailments of nature. He shouldn't smoke, he shouldn't drink, he shouldn't partake in the sexual aspects. So I think like that's probably a little bit of Tinto Brass coming through here. And this is based on a Japanese book, I believe. So they kind of carried over a lot of the stuff from that as well. But as far as like the visually, it's a well done film. The sets are great. I love the location. That it's a period piece definitely helps us become a little bit more interesting, right? There's a decent amount of weird, kind of bizarre characters. I think that the dubbing does kind of hurt it in some aspects. Some of the characters are not dubbed very well, and this is in English and Italian, but a lot of the characters, when they speak, they're dubbed in English, and it's a little jarring at times. Almost feels a little out of place, especially some of the clearly Italian actors and whatnot. There's plenty of nudity and plenty of voyeurism and fetishism if you're into that kind of stuff. Not as explicit as something like Cheeky, which I think was like next level, for him. Just as that, and it's kind of shocking when you're like watching this 4K of Cheeky, like, oh, we're going here. But this one, I'm not the hugest fan of this film. It's just not like it's a bad film at all. It's just not necessarily something that I'm 100% invested in. Like I do like his films, and like I said, it's Nakbar Budapest and Caligula is a weird one, obviously, but I am a fan of that insane movie. And I do think I prefer something like All Ladies Do It and Cheeky. I just think they're just a little bit more up my alley. P.O. Box Tinto Brass is probably somewhere around this level as well, where he actually becomes like a star in his own movie. But I don't know. I would recommend this if you're into his films. I think that if you're into historical kind of sex kind of films as well, because this is an odd mix, right? Taking this like sex Tinto Brass movie and making it at the backdrop of the 40s fascism makes it a little bit more interesting to me. I think that the also interesting looking at the lead character in this movie as this kind of character that's like doing this voyeurism and developing these photos, and this him and his wife are almost playing this weird sexual game that's has a lot of levels in it. There's a couple funny lines as well too, where I don't want to spoil that line, but I really enjoyed it, where a character says he was an atheist, he wasn't a Protestant, like as in like it's fine, he'd be cool with me being here. It's not like he was a Protestant or something. I find the line very comedic, very Catholic humor. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a 4K from the original negative. Looks fantastic. Restoration, HDR, audio commentary by Ercolani and Marcus Striglager. And they have a lot of info on the movie. They do a good job. And we also have some special features here. Brass Talisman, interview with actor Franco Barnarelli, Keyhole Venice, a look at the Venetian locations of the film. And then we have archival interview with Tinto Brass, outtakes of the key, theatrical trailer, and then we have reversible sleeve, 20-page illustrated booklet with essay by Ercolani. So really good job on this one. Interesting movie, and it ends right before Mussolini. The ending here. I don't want to spoil it, but you guys get the point. It's not like his assassination, but it's before that. But anyways, good stuff. The Key, good release of something that I'm not overly thrilled with, but I respect Tinto Brass's films. I would check it out if you like the film. It's a great release, like I said, but looks great, sounds great. It's just it's not necessarily something that I'm super invested in. Again, I do lose interest a lot of times when I'm watching movies that I follow kind of like better off people with money and everything of that nature, and you're just like they're like dealing with their problems that are all like almost self kind of put on themselves, but still interesting film. The Key. Okay, the next one here is Ready or Not, Here I Come. Of course, by the guys who did the first one. They did Abigail. They did one of the Scream films. So, first and foremost, I'm not the biggest fan of the first Ready or Not. I was okay with it. I like Samara Weaving. I think she's a great actress. I think she's got a lot of screen presence. I think she's fun. I liked Abigail. I didn't see the new Scream one. But yeah, Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. This bad boy is an hour and 48 minutes. So, pretty on the level with the way that horror movies run at this time. I'm going to start off with no spoilers here. Samara Weaving deserves better, if you ask me. Again, I wasn't a huge fan of the first one, so take that with a grain of salt when I talk about this one. I didn't care for this movie very much. There's a couple good scenes in here, but I don't want to spoil them. And it would be a lot more impactful if the characters that are in the scenes, not Samara Weaving, but another character, actually had any character development or nuance or any background to them, except that I'm mad at you. But, And I'm not talking about the sister character in that aspect. Okay, so essentially it picks up right where the first movie left off. Samara Weaving ends up going to a hospital, and it kind of ups the ante, right? Now she's got to take on the whole, like, kind of council for the position of power. This is what spoiled in the trailer, basically. So her sister's brought along, and her sister, a strange sister that we didn't know existed, and her have to survive the night against these rich pieces of shit, including Sarah Michelle Gellar and her brother, the guy from The Faculty is the movie I know him from. And the weird variety of characters that are about as paper thin and one-dimensional as you expect in a movie about rich evil people. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. The pacing is way off. The ending is it pays off fine. There's a scene that uses Bonnie Tyler that I thought was enjoyable, and I think that a couple of the performances are good. Samara Weaving is fine. I think that the arguments between her and her sister are incredibly trite and cheap, and they feel generic, and they never stop, and they keep doing the same dialogue over and over again, and I was incredibly bored throughout that. The movie is a giant chase movie, and like the first movie, the whole end of that is, it gets boring in the first movie for me, because, you know, it's not, you know, systematically picked off where somebody dies here. You know, it's just boring and boring until the very ending, where it all kind of explodes, literally. And this one, it does a little bit better with the pacing and things of that nature, just in terms of kills, but at the same time, it's I feel like it's longer, and it becomes even more boring, and the characters are completely flat. And we've had this issue for me. How to Make a Killing is the same kind of problems, where it's like you're writing really terrible characters. Death of a Unicorn has really generic characters as well, although the acting is better because they got better performances out of Richard E. Grant and Will Poulter, and they're just a little bit, I guess they're a little bit more nuanced in that one, although I don't like that movie. I think the evil rich people are best in that film. And if we're gonna play, like, you know, politics and that nature and everything like that, I think that The Hunt is a fun aspect how they do it, a little bit more nuanced, comedic. And I feel like these characters are so generic and so boring. The main, the guy from The Faculty does a pretty good job. Just at first he's like a little iffy, but as it goes on, you realize how monstrous he is, and I think that his cruelty shows through in the film. The characters are goofy and stupid, and the comedy's not funny to me. I know comedy's very subjective, but I just don't think these people are very funny, and I don't think that, you know, I'm more of a, you know, I like all sorts of different kind of humor here, but I don't know what kind of humor this is. Somebody said it's only funny because it's not serious. It's not die hard serious. That's the kind of humor they're going for, but it just doesn't work for me. I didn't really laugh all that much at all. So I guess I don't really have to spoil all that much. There's some fun kind of gory things that happen. Samara Weaving does have a bit of fun, but I think she's a little bit wasted in times. And Michelle Gellar, you know, Sarah Michelle Gellar, I like her fine. I think she's a little bit wasted as well. There is a nice little roles in here, which I don't necessarily want to spoil, because I don't know if it's well known that this actor's in here, but that was fun seeing them. Elijah Wood's good in it too. I always like Elijah Wood, and I gotta love Elijah Wood for doing a bunch of different horror movies and things of that nature. Like, he was in The Toxic Avenger, which I didn't love, and he was in The Monkey, which I liked, and he was in this one. He's in a bunch of stuff. He gives Truth or Dare a bunch of love. So Elijah Wood had he picks a lot of cool, fun genre films. So I love Elijah Wood, always will, and he's good in this. Overall, I think this movie's subpar. I didn't care for it. And I feel like I'm that guy, right? Where I hated The Bride. I don't like Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. And a lot of people love this movie. It's just, I was bored to fucking tears in the theaters. I was with Jeremy, and Jeremy started laughing at like the second or third kind of back and forth big dramatic speech that, the sisters had, and it started cracking up how generic and terrible it was. Just so boring and bland and just embarrassingly trite and cheap, and it's just like, man, it's the same shit over and over fucking again. Anyways, not a huge fan of Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. You should see it yourself. Watch the trailer. If you like the first one, I think you'll really like this one. I just think I'm a bitter old man that hates everything that's not old. But here we go. Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. All right, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
God blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Alright, the first one up isn't necessarily a horror film, but it definitely made the video Nasty Section 3 list. That's right. And this is Bloody Legend, the complete Cliff, Tremolo collection. And we're going to be talking about G.B.H, grievous bodily harm. And yeah, I've heard about this movie for years. It's an SOV movie, and it is a bizarre one. I'm so amazed that this bad boy actually got a release. But there's two versions on here, the pre-cert version, which is 90 minutes, and the version that went wide in Britain, and that's like 73 minutes. So I did watch the 73-minute version, and then I kind of went through the other version and watched the kind of things that I missed. The pre-release version is a better quality. So SOV, 83. This is an odd one. This actor is definitely a bizarre kind of guy. That this is a vanity project. He wrote the screenplay or the story, and then someone else directed it. But he's kind of the main guy, and truth be told, you know, you watch a lot of these vanity projects like The Instructor, or, you know, there's so many of them. None are coming to mind when they do it, but a lot of them. Streets of Blood was the one that SRS put out. They are vanity projects, and some people do better than others. And I have to say that Cliff here is probably the one that came across the best of the bunch. You know, he's in good shape. He's got good charisma. He's not a bad actor. He's fun. I think like Steve Barkett as well from The Aftermath and things of that nature. But he's got a decent, you know, charisma about him. The story is pretty much paper fucking thin, almost like hilariously silly. But you know, Cliff got sent to prison because he did something, I don't remember, beat up a bunch of guys and got sent to prison. He gets out, and there's a criminal Keller that's come back into town, and he's taking over the nightclubs. In the very beginning, we see him walk in, and there's like a robocizing going on with this like two couples. It's very, you know, 80s like you know, killer workout kind of bullshit. You're like, this is not what happens in a club. I don't know what kind of club this is, but this ain't it. And they're dancing, and they're in spandex and whatnot. Hilarious scene. And these two goons come in with Keller, and they shoot up the place, and they beat up the night watchman, and they say, we're taking this club over. Ridiculously hammy bad guys. And then essentially this other club owner's like, listen, I want to hire Cliff, even though we had bad blood. He goes through one of his other guys, Chris, and Chris and Cliff are buddies. So he's like, Chris, convince him to join, and they become best friends again. He convinces them to take over this club. He's kind of like, you know, the Dalton of the club, right? From Roadhouse. And he gets his own house to live in, and he gets paid $300 a week. So essentially it happens right away. People come in, there's tons of fights. Cliff beats the shit out of everybody, and Keller's going to get involved, and the stakes are going to get higher and higher. And in between having sex with random women, Cliff is going to wage a war. But when they strike out and hurt one of his buddies, that's it. He goes to town, and there's some crazy shootouts at the end, and the whole like last 20 minutes is all just wild, weird action. The fun part of this movie is there's a couple side characters that kind of interact, like these two main goons that are a lot of fun, and I don't remember the one guy's name, but he's this big guy, these two brothers, and they fight a lot, and that kind of of makes for like a camaraderie, even though they're villains between them, and I kind of like that stuff. But overall, this movie is very bizarre and very weird. It's cheap, it's sloppy, it's entertaining though. G.B.H. I would recommend Slight. You know, it's a good vanity project SOV thing if you're into this kind of stuff. Is it amazing? No. Is it a cheap, weird movie made on a budget that has a backstory that's probably a little bit more interesting than the actual movie? Probably. The commentary is decent, talks a little bit about, you know, Cliff and all that kind of stuff like that, and and his life, and, you know, maybe feeling a little bit bitter to a certain extent, you know, that he probably felt like he could do more, he could be the next Bronson. He even says something about being Bronson without a stash. But yeah, G.B.H, it's not a horror film, but it definitely made the Video Section 3 Nasties list, and it has like the appeal to horror fans because, you know, the end has its share of fair share of violence, although I don't think it necessarily deserved its spot on there if you're comparing it to stuff like what would come later in the 80s, like, you know, people just getting blown to fucking pieces and stuff, and RoboCop and Predator. But hey, it was Britain, and they didn't fucking, the cover and the name probably really bothered them, but that's pretty much half the Video Nasties list ended up being on there because of the name or the title or the box art. But yeah, interesting stuff. There's a commentary on here. This has all his movies on there. I've only actually had a chance to watch the one, but yeah, and this has a weird feature about him making of this like giant killer Pike movie, which looked fucking awesome, but I don't think ever got released. Okay, we got one from Italy here, and this is Killing of the Flesh, and this is by, Caesar Cavari? I can't think of his name, but he did a movie from 1960s called Hyena in the Safe, which is a great kind of crime movie about all these people backstabbing each other to get this money out of a safe, and it's really complex and fun, and excellent movie. He also did, you know, a Western Nazi exploitation movie, both of which, I'd say the Western he did, Meet and Kill, I think it's called, is pretty decent. The Nazi exploitation movie is not great, but most of them are not. So, you know, I've seen a few of his movies, and I was like, okay, he's doing one in 1983, and this is more of a thriller kind of mystery than horror. And this stars Mark Porral. It's Mark Porral's last movie, of course. Mark Porral was in Don't Torture a Duckling, Live Free and Die, or something with the cop movie. The Ruggero Deodato one, is it? Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man, I think is what it's called. So he was in that, so that's where I knew Mark Porral, especially as the priest in Don't Torture a Duckling. So I was like, okay. He had a tragic end, of course. I think he was involved in drugs and whatnot, and this is his last movie that's listed. So, right away, this movie opens up, and there's a bunch of characters in this house, and they're there for somewhat like an inheritance, I get the idea, and they're talking, and just like, I feel like I'm supposed to know who all these characters are. I'm supposed to know all their backstory and all their interminglings already without having seen anything, and that's where they kind of go, and you're like, what is going on here? So the movie basically has all these characters trying to make each other feel bad, putting each other down, sleeping with other people, stripping in front of other people, basically pissing each other off and making each other feel just, you know, pissed off about the relationships and the affairs and all this kind of shit's going on, and they're all kind of wondering who's going to get the inheritance of someone who died here. As it progresses, a couple people do get killed eventually, and I was just lost a lot of the time. I was like, I don't know who these characters are. I don't know how they're related. I don't like any of them. They're not interesting enough to care, and I don't have enough information to give a shit. It's like Hyena in the Safe if none of the characters had much character and they were just kind of thrown in the movie without the safe and the elaborate mechanisms within that movie. So it's kind of a really boring, bland giallo mystery kind of movie that is riddled with plenty of nudity and sex. So if that's what you're looking for, then check it out. But the reveal at the end is kind of like a lift from My Dear Killer, where the character, like Mark Porral's walking around looking at everyone's eyes like, yeah, and you're just like, this is not nearly as good as the George Hilton scene in My Dear Killer, but it is what it is. And the reveal of kind of who the killer is, how they show like the flashbacks, I was like, that's cool. And then the very end, it's kind of mediocre. This is a pretty bad movie, pretty boring movie, pretty run-of-the-mill, although at the same time, maybe it was translated better in the subtitles, but I just don't think so. I think this is just kind of a crummy movie that almost doesn't even feel complete. It feels like it's missing pieces and things of that nature. Overall, I would not say Killing of the Flesh is worth watching from 1983. You know, Italy's had a weird run in 83 so far. You know, I know that they have a lot more movies that come out in kind of the mid to late 80s that were like, you know, kind of trying to go for the video store and everything like that. In the beginning, they had lots of great stuff. And then, like, I feel like we're kind of slowing down a bit. A lot of kind of weird titles, maybe stragglers from that era, but then some, like, stuff like this that never really got a wide release. I never heard anyone mention Killing of the Flesh. But a fairly interesting director that I said his name wrong, and Mark Porral being in here. And there's other people that you'd recognize, but this one just doesn't do much for me. Not very interesting to me, Killing of the Flesh. Okay, the next one here is Killing of Satan from 1983. That's right, we're going from Killing of the Flesh to Killing of Satan. So Killing of Satan, this is a Filipino movie, and this plot is very much like an Indonesian movie. So, in the Philippines in the early 80s, we did have some wacky stuff, some weird stuff, like Raw Force in 82 was produced, American co-production, but we started to get into some other stuff that was a little bit more, I guess artsy, like Kizamata, and I can't think of the Haplos, the haunted house movie with the World War II kind of backdrop and everything of that nature. Those movies are both really kind of artsy and well done and very serious films. So, you think back at like the weird Mad Doctor of Death Island from the 60s and stuff, the Filipino weird movies like that, or the bat creature ones or stuff, just weird shit like that. So I'm like, it's kind of weird we don't get that many of those. And I was like, I guess I'm wrong. Killing of Satan is 100% that, but the plot feels totally Indonesian, which those movies really have that kind of flair as well. But with the Philippines, they'll add a little bit more sex and nudity and sometimes a little bit more gore, because Indonesia kind of steers clear, although they do have crazy gore and weird special effects and wild shit, they kind of steer clear of the hardcore sex or nudity that's really because being predominantly Muslim. That's kind of like, I think, a no-no in a lot of their films and cinema. But this one here, it does have a few scenes here. So in the very beginning, we have this gang of kind of like Satanists that are walking around. They all have like magical powers, and they have this big kind of fight with the local kind of like magic man as a good man, and they spin his head fucking around. And I was like, this is awesome already. And I think this relation of that guy comes into the village, and he's like, I'm here to see Dad. I think it's his son. And he's like, I'm here to see Dad. And they're like, sorry, Dad died, but he wanted to give you all the magic powers. And he's like, what? So they translate all the magical powers within him. I think the father's like dying or something. He's really sick. He's not dead yet. But, he ends up kind of like sacrificing himself to save the son. And the son becomes this like magical badass. And they kidnap his daughter and I think his wife or somebody else from the village. And he's got to go against these magic baddies. But, there's this kind of big showdown where he fights all of them. And it's great and fun. And the bad guys are incredibly cheap and memorable and look really weird and just over the top. Like there's a guy with like cross eyes. You're like, what is going on here? They just look like weird goons. Vic Diaz is not in this movie though, which kind of blew my mind. I was like, where's Vic Diaz? He's got to be in this movie. This sounds like something he'd be in, but he's not. He's in like all the other ones. But maybe he's dead by this point. I don't fucking know. But there's this scene in this movie that kind of like jumped and made me like kind of like what the fuck? Like there's a character in he's in the canoe, the main character, and he's like going through to look for like kind of like find his power or whatever, and like this like nasty melted thing pops out of the water. It's like and it's like, I'm giving you the powers, and it's like his dad, and like it's so fucking weird and just creepy as shit. And I was like, what the hell? This movie made me do that a couple of times with the special effects and the weirdness and stuff. Like I said, it's just a lot of fun and just bizarre, and it ends where we have like a showdown between like Satan. So it's like, what is this? It reminds me of like the weird John Woo kind of horror film from 1982, where John Woo does the horror, like I can't remember what the title of that one is, but it basically Showdown with Satan. But this is more of in just in that Indonesian Filipino kind of like style. Very entertaining, very weird, very bizarre. If you like the kind of like Mystics in Bali, Queen of Black Magic, Raw Force, then I'd highly recommend checking out Killing of Satan. I was very happy with this one. This was a surprise. Very fun movie. Check it out. Okay, the last one from 1983 is a TV movie, and this is The Awakening of Candra. That is right. Not Sandra, Candra. And this is, a TV film. I really didn't know what to expect. And right when it started, I was like, this is going to be more of a thriller, not really a horror film. And it's more psychological thriller. Maybe a crime, but a little bit of horror, basically in the psychological aspects and the flashbacks. This is based on a true story of, a 17-year-old bride that was kidnapped kind of in the woods and kind of like Stockholm Syndrome, kind of brainwashed into a certain way of thinking. But this movie has a tremendous cast in here. What's this actor's name? Was it Blanche Baker, I think is her name. And people would know her from her amazing performance in The Girl Next Door as Auntie Ruth. Now, The Girl Next Door is a movie that I don't love. I like the book. I think the movie has its issues, for me personally, but I think that some of the performances in that movie are fantastic, and I think Auntie Ruth is one of the best in the movie, if not the best. Great villain, great performance, and she's really good in this one too, and I had never seen her in anything else but, The Girl Next Door, so she plays the kind of main girl. And we also have great character actors in Richard Jekyll, one of my all-time favorites. He's in the year before, he's in Blood Song, and he's just in tons of great movies. The Dirty Dozen, Devil's Brigade, The Dark. I can go on forever about Richard Jekyll. We also have Jeffrey Tambor from, Meet Joe Black and the Great Tales in the Crypt episode, Arrested Development, another fantastic actor. And as the main baddie, we have Cliff D. Young from stuff like Shock Treatment. But I know him mostly from Shock Treatment. He's in a bunch of movies. Good actor as well, and a great fucking performance in here. He's channeling Bruce Dern 100%. On fucking Twitter, twisted performance, a good performance too, especially for a TV movie. I was very happy with The Awakening of Candra. So essentially what we have here is she's newlywed. She goes there with, out to the woods, kind of the mountains with her boyfriend and her dog, and they run into this strange guy who's fishing, and they start to hang out with him a little bit. It's Clifty Young, and he kills the husband. He kills the dog, and then we kind of fast forward. It says 3 days later, she wanders into the police department with him, and basically she says, he killed my husband. He says, yeah, I killed him. It was an accident, and she kind of just seems completely in shock and out of it and can't remember everything. And Richard Jekyll's like, man, this isn't right. I think something's going on. So he starts to pick at it, and he starts to dig at it, and through the help of Jeffrey Tambor, who's kind of a psychiatrist, they kind of start to unveil what actually happened. We kind of have these flashbacks reliving the moments, and we see everything that happened. But this is a really well done movie, well acted. The structure is kind of unique and cool, and although it's not a perfect movie, the most exciting movie, they do everything they can with what they have, and they've hired some really tremendous actors. I mean, everybody does really well out of the leads. Clifty Young is excellent. Richard Jekyll is very likable. Blanche Baker is also really good, and Jeffrey Tambor is always great. So I was like, man, and I love seeing Jeffrey Tambor act with Richard Jekyll. It's like that. I never thought they were in a movie together, let alone get to share screen time. So that was very cool. I would recommend this one. This is good stuff, especially for a TV kind of thriller, a TV crime thriller. Maybe it's a little Lifetime, but man, the acting's good. And Clifty Young, I think he probably steals the movie, to be honest, just as a completely unhinged son of a bitch. But good stuff. Okay, the Patreon pick here is The Wolf Brigade from 1999, and this is a Japanese anime film, and I believe there's some movies that are related to this that I did not see, so maybe I'm a little lost here. Red Spectacles, I think that has some sort of relation to this one, and Tyler Tadeo picked this one. Of course, it definitely feels like a Tyler movie, and I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it as a compliment. So here we go, Wolf Brigade. This was a lot to take in. We kind of open up with the whole Japanese World War II, and we talk about the city kind of crashing down and poverty and these different kind of sects of people coming out, not terrorists necessarily, civil unrest, all that kind of stuff like that. And we kind of get to 1999, and we realize that there's been this secret police force. The police are constantly kind of in battle with these protesters, these people that are out there, fighting for their rights or whatever, or picketing or whatever not. And basically, they have this secret force called the Wolf. It's not even the secret force is not even the Wolf Brigade, but there's this secret force of soldiers that are in this elaborate armor that are like badasses, and they go in and they basically are sent in under secret missions when it's really dangerous, like bomb threats of that nature. And that's what happens here. They have these things they call Little Red Riding Hoods. They're these young girls that carry bombs because they can kind of infiltrate places and not be pointed out. But, this young little girl is innocent. Nobody's going to expect it. But they basically bring bombs to other people to throw. So that's kind of what happens here. And this kind of special force goes into the sewer system in the very beginning. And they have this run-in. And the main character here sees this young girl, and he doesn't pull the trigger. And the bomb goes off. He survives. She dies, obviously. And it kind of messes with him. And you really don't know what's in his head, where he stands, and he has to go back through retraining, and he's kind of on the hook, right? And this brings in all this bureaucracy and stuff of that nature, where there's these secret kind of groups that are like, we want to get rid of this force or dissolve it into this other force, and there's all these back end dealings and all these things of that nature, and you really don't know who to trust, and you don't really know where the allegiances fall. And it gets more complex when this young man, who's our main character here, he has to be the wolf, right? There's this whole allegory to the Little Red Riding Hood story, right, of the wolf and Little Red Riding Hood. And this young girl that says, I'm the sister of the girl who died, and they befriend, they start this relationship, and nothing seems as it is, right? Old friends of his don't seem trustworthy. No one seems trustworthy, so it gets really confusing in that aspect. And what I think this movie really does well, besides the horrific violence when it shows it, it's very gritty, it's very realistic, and it's very I don't want to say over the top, but very elongated, right? We see a lot of shots, people get shot many times, they fall, it's loud, it's jarring, and as it should be. And there's a lot of combat, subterranean combat, which stands out. But the one thing that this movie really does is kind of just paint this fascist kind of picture of society and how dark it is, and the psychology that people go through, and all this kind of stuff of that nature. And it's dark, and it's twisted, and it's complex, and if you lose a little bit of sight of what's going on, you may be a little bit lost on where the characters and allegiances fall. I think the animation is spectacular. I think it has a nice realism to it. I think that what it's saying is twisted, There's so many movies that kind of do these things, and they have to juggle these things, and it's like, man, this is a very clever script. It would not be easy to get out your point of view in this aspect, right? And it's not even easy to explain exactly where they're getting at or what they're saying, but you kind of understand and grasp it throughout the entirety of the movie by the time it's over. over, you're like, oh, that's very unpleasant. But, this is like, you just hit the point. What excellent movie. Wolf Brigade. I would definitely watch this. I would definitely check out the director's other films, maybe films that are aligned or in the similar vein as this one. But check out Wolf Brigade. Great stuff. Great recommendation. Good film. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Necrops. There's no Blu-ray or 4K of Night Flyer. Such a great Stephen King, a fave of mine. Yeah, it's a great movie too. Miguel Ferreira. I haven't seen that in a long time. I'd really like to see a Blue or 4K of that one. But we've seen some of the HBO kind of movies get released recently, like Hitcher and Surviving the Game and No Escape. So maybe we will get Night Flyer. I feel like we will get it soon. He says, it's my favorite YouTuber. New content. Let's go. Thank you. Hot Knife. What's the name of the movie during 1983 intro segment where the zombie jumps out of the ground? I think you're talking to Eyes of Fire. They're more like forest like spirits, but yeah, they look like zombies. Nick from Flanders, 59. I watched Red Sonja so many times growing up. It was always playing on some channel or other back on the early to mid 90s. How can you not love this movie? Salem's Lot, I discovered a bit later, 99 or 2000 if memory serves, easily one of the best King adaptations ever. Allegedly, Mr. King changed the appearance of his Type 1 daddy vampires to resemble Reggie Noller's Nosferatu look, as it looks more inhuman and creepy. Yeah, he was creepy as shit. Questions? Would you catch on pretty quick being a horror expert if a vampire moved into your neighborhood? Honestly, at this point, I don't pay attention to anything in my neighborhood. Literally, anything could be happening, and I just mind my own business because I don't interact, which is bad. What's your favorite King adaptations that stays true to the spirit of the novel but changes some details? For me, it's At People. Damn that ending. Christine. I think Christine keeps the spirit of the novel for the most part, except that it adds the Carpenter nihilism where it changes that there's not a ghost in the car, it's just the ghost is evil, and I like that aspect a little bit better when we translate it to film, so I'll say Christine. Which Arnie sword and sorcery flick would you have to have started, if possible, until next week, God willing? None of them, because I'm lazy, and that seems like a lot of freaking work. We Belgium's already had one major scare this past week due to a bomb threat in one of Brussels' major train stations. Luckily, nothing came of it. Stay safe. That's awful. Hate hearing that. Brady 95, did you pick up the Criterion of Gummo? I did not pick up the Criterion of Gummo. I'm not the biggest fan of Gummo, but I think in their next sale or something I will grab it. Satan 610 0 or 6100-0. Cutter's Way is the most overblown, pretentious piece of spinach. Jeff Bridges is the sorriest nepotism baby ever. Boring, so fucking predictable and lazy. Hurt is lost, out of his depth. You blew it with this one, my friend. Hey, to each their own. I like the movie. I always like Jeff Bridges. I mean, if we do Nepo babies, everybody's a fucking Nepo baby in Hollywood. Everybody's a Nepo baby everywhere. Even I don't fucking badmouth any of the companies I've ever worked for, but there's always somebody that's related to somebody that's in charge of me. Way up, dude. Handpicked, waving, thumbs up. Thank you. KNJHorror.com. I had seen the title Mad Mutilator, but I didn't know anything about it, so I never purchased it. After watching a review, I went and bought the DVD immediately off eBay. $85. Looks great to me. I love the original Violent Shit 1 and 2. Not too much on Zombie Doom, but that's alright. Looking forward to Mad Mutilator. Thanks. I actually prefer Zombie Doom or the other ones, but I do like Violent Shit 2. If you like Violent Shit 1 and 2, I think you will like Orgoff Mad Mutilator. Hideki Talks, thank you. The Blues of Pop Saint is from 83 too, and that's one of Franco's best. I'll have to check that one out. Collectus, Salem's Lot might be the last big vampire movie before Fright Night. Looks like the subgenre took a break in the early 80s. I think you're right. Irish Steve, great reviews as always, but no EU at the end. I'll get it this time. Trust me, LOL. Beyond Sour Ground, I've been on a fantasy film kick lately since so many of them are coming out on physical media. I watched Red Sonja online and found it really underwhelming, despite having a lot of the right ingredients to be a cult classic. I was going to blind buy the Arrow release, and at $40 I'm glad I passed on it. However, I did decide to take a chance on Excalibur, partially based on your review. I ordered it along with Salem's Lot and Arrow's 4K of Hard Boiled. I'm so glad Arrow's doing the John Woo Golden Princess stuff, since it gives us a better quality option over the Shout Factory releases, and it looks like 88 Films UK is starting to do the UHDs of Roger Corman's library too. Awesome. I did pick up the Hard Boiled of Arrow. It got shipped, so I'm looking forward to checking out that one. I've seen it, of course, but that version. Ken Coakley, my jaw dropped when I saw the packaging for the 4K of Salem's Lot. I was already excited about a 4K quality transfer of the film, which I watch every couple of months for nostalgic reasons, as reliving the 70s, which was when my childhood was. I remember when it was on TV. One of my friends from school was watching it when I called him, so I turned it on and watched it as well. I was pissed off when I found out it was 2 parts, but now I realize why it was 2 parts. I also watch every couple of months is because it's Tobe Hooper's film. It was on a roll until Poltergeist. You could tell that Spielberg did a lot of location scouting and that Hooper directed Poltergeist with his hands tied. Enough Poltergeist bashing. Salem's Lot is the topic. I assume that Hooper was responsible for the great quality of the film. Fred Willard, who played Larry Crockett, was already well-known comedy actor, so killing him off was a real gamble. He was pushing 50 when he did the film. He still looked young, and when he passed away at the age of 87. I'm sure that Hooper was responsible for Bala looking like Nosferatu, as well as hiring David Soul as Ben Mears and Lance Kerwin as Mark Petrie, with the intent to have them look like each other. They look like father and son, or like Petrie was Mears when Mears was younger, poking around the Marsden house. Unfortunately, I have to wait to get out of the nursery camps to get it, but I must get this 4K now. My 2 cents on Cutter's Way. I originally watched it on a paid TV service that was pre-VHS. Service was called Starcase. I watched it for John Hurt. Starcase had shown another John Hurt movie called Heartbeat, in which Hurt played beat poet Jack Kerouac. Nick Nolte played Neil Cassidy, Sissy Spacek, and Ray Sharkey were in the film as well. There's a video on YouTube of Warren Zevon doing Werewolves of London live. In this version, he makes a reference to Cutter's Way. Oh, that's wild. I love Werewolves of London. Fun fact, and Dusselberry from Jaws 2 was in Cutter's Way. When you reviewed Mickey and Nicky, you mentioned that John Cassavetes was the director. First film that came to mind was Minnie and Moskowitz, starring Seymour Cassel and Gina Rowlands. I also thought of the use of the film in Halloween Kills, in which the LGBTQ couple are watching it on Halloween night. Why they chose that to watch on Halloween night, I'll never know. Wait, are they watching Mikey and Nikki on? That's fucking weird. Tempo Tapas. Awesome to see a review of Mikey and Nikki. It's funny that you bring up Friends of Eddie Coyle, because I also think of those two movies together, but I'm not sure why. Both have excellent performances, and they're both doing the whole downbeat 70s thing that I love. Spoiler, it's Friends betraying Friends. Edit. That's what I do. Edit. I'm joining your Patreon. I enjoyed your videos for 10 years plus now, so it's time to contribute. Do Patreon members give film recommendations using a Patreon chat or the email or what? I appreciate that, but just shoot me an email on Patreon once a month, and you could shoot me one this month, but every month at the beginning I'll send out a message and people can recommend me a movie I'll throw in the bag, and if I've done it already I'll send you a link. But yeah, let's get into this update, guys. Alright, let's start this update. First up, Vinegar Syndrome Office Killer. This is a weird movie, bizarre film. 4K here. Carol Kane, Molly Ringwald. Yeah, I've seen this one before. Don't remember every detail. I just remember it being kind of a bizarre one. Not all my stuff from Vinegar Syndrome came, but a big chunk of it did, so here we go. Massacre, Lucio Fulci presents. This one I've never seen. Heard cool things about it. I heard it's pretty gory. I hope they do all the Lucio Fulci presents movies, even if they're terrible. I don't really care. Here's the other slipcover one. I know that's the worst thing ever. I love Fulci, so I like to see some of the stuff he produced. Then we have the Forgotten Gialli Volume 9. They got the maid outfit on there. I love that. And the Giallo Killer there. That's such a cool cover. Eyeball there. The 3 films on here are Madness, Bruno Mattei movie, made in the early 90s. Super weird. It's basically a remake of Tenebrae. It's so bizarre. Bugie, Rosse, The Final Scoop, and Murder in Blue Light that has David Hess, and I've heard of that one. So I'm looking forward. I really just want to sit down and watch a bunch of these movies that I purchased over the years, but hell, I don't have time for anything. Then here we got one from Mondo Macabro. These are 2 of the best Indonesian horror flicks. We got Queen of Black Magic and Mystics in Bali. How fucking cool is that? Together. I love that. These are 2 of my favorites from 81. And 81's such a strong year that I couldn't put these in my top 25, but if they were from 82 or 83, or they would have definitely been in my top 25. I feel bad about those not being in my top 25. And I feel bad about a lot of the movies from 81 because it's such a strong year, like Bewitched and Corpse Mania are not in my top 25, but they would have most certainly made it in 82 or 83. But yeah, anyways, great release from Mondo Macabro. Always love what they do. Probably the most underrated Blu-ray label out there, if you ask me. I mean, there's some great ones, but I think Mondo doesn't get the love it should. Yeah, back to the video. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. As always, have a good one.